He's Kevin Danna, voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. This is Locked On Warriors. We got a lot to talk about. The Warriors had a desperately needed respite over the weekend. Kevin, you ready to go, my man?
Let's do it, Cyrus.
Beautiful. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. You can follow Kevin Danna on Twitter at Kevo408. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Morning, Kevin. How you doing today, man?
Doing swell, man. Just got up after a fun G League game last night against South Bay. Tough loss for the C-Dubs, but yeah, no, locked and ready to go. I'm locked on, as they would say.
Nice pun, man. And so, Kevin, a huge reason I brought you on here, besides the fact that I love having you on. You're a great guest. Your insights for the Warriors are incredible. But there's been a lot of discussion lately, and when the Warriors are as good as they are, I believe they have a 40-13 mark. Is it 40 or 41? Correct me if I'm mistaken on that.
40-13 going into tonight's game against Oklahoma City.
Thanks, sir. And, so they have the second best record in the NBA. And again, they got this really desperately needed three-day rest. And, when the Warriors are as good as they are, you got to nitpick a little bit. There isn't a lot to talk about, right? I mean, obviously with this Warriors team, there is, though, fortunately for us. But in the grand scheme of things, you're really nitpicking if you're trying to criticize, if you're, looking for interesting angles to talk about. But one of them is the fact that the Warriors just don't have a lot of size. That's really been the main criticism for this team. And there's been a lot of uncertainty about what can the Warriors do at this point, because they have no open roster spots. The James Wiseman situation, even though maybe you can provide an update on him in just a moment, but it's fluid. It's almost like by the day. We still don't know when he's actually going to play. And I just learned recently that the Warriors are basically screwed in terms of adding someone else. Like I thought there were like injury exemptions. There was like different loopholes you can follow. But unless doctors find out that Wiseman for sure is out for the year, meaning like unless they can conclusively determine that he's not going to be playing until June 15th, that's the date they set, you can't replace him. And even if you can get an exemption, you can't replace his roster spot. So all that talk is kind of moot. So all that's really left for the Warriors adding a big is either cutting a player, which is highly unlikely given the team chemistry of this organization is one of the fundamental variables for their success. The only remaining option of those two-way deals was Chiozza owns, and who's the second one? Is it Weatherspoon that has the other one?
Yeah,
or is it
Quindary Weatherspoon has the second one.
Yeah, so the only way they can get a big is to bring someone up from Santa Cruz, and replace one of those two players with another player for a two-way contract. Am I correct on that so far? I hope.
So, yeah, they could add someone on a two-way, and they would have to release either Chiozza or Quindary to do that. So if they wanted to go that route, they could.
In your opinion, should they go that route? Is that an option that you think they might explore at some point?
I mean, personally, now I will preface anything that is said on Locked On Warriors podcast when I am on is like state-run radio. So like I am like part of the corporate machine. I do work for the Santa Cruz Warriors, and
Cheers.
Like I will preface by saying like if I like suggest that like Chris Chiozza or Quindary Weatherspoon gets waived in favor of someone else, I'm basically saying my fellow employee should get fired. And so I would never say that personally. I like both of those guys as well, like as dudes and as hoopers. I think they're both very good players.
No, Kevin, you make a great point. I don't want to put you in a bad position. So let me rephrase my question then. Let's say the Warriors. Okay, let me rephrase it so you're in a safer space. Let's say the Warriors are granted a third two-way in a total hypothetical situation. What player on the roster would you promote given the Warriors are as small as they are?
Okay, so and no, that's totally cool, Cyrus. You can ask me any hard-hitting question you want. Like I just want the listeners to know that like, all right, this isn't completely unbiased and like I am part of the machine. I do control your corporate soul. Like, but like so I'll just say like that's a good like caveat. Or like if the Warriors were to decide to add a big man, here are the guys in the G League that they could look at. There's one guy on Santa Cruz that's above 6'6" right now that's playing. His name is Selim Awugbe. And he's really interesting. He's also pretty raw. He played D2 college basketball at Azusa Pacific. He averages like 16, 17 minutes a game, and he's at more than 2 blocks per game. So he's a really good rim protector. He had 3 blocks and 10 rebounds last night. And I think he's still on a minute restriction. I don't know how many minutes he played last night off the top of my head, but it was probably around 20. So 3 blocks and 10 rebounds in 20 minutes is pretty damn good. He is learning the game offensively right now. This is his second year as a professional basketball player. I think he was working at Lowe's before Santa Cruz like called him to play in the G League bubble last year. Like
incredible.
Yeah, like
incredible.
A heck of a story. Awesome dude. Santa Cruz doesn't necessarily need to look. I mean, Golden State doesn't like any of the guys in the G League that aren't on a 2-way or on an NBA contract or NBA free agents. So some other guys that like could potentially fit that bill as a big man if Golden State wanted to do that. My personal favorite is Emmanuel Terry. He's an energy big. I think he's 6'9". He's a little undersized, but I mean, he's like loony height. Like big time offensive rebounder, bouncy as hell, just plays hard. I love him. He used to do this thing after every dunk where he would go like this, like his mind was blown. It was the best celebration in the G League. Big fan of him. Freddie Gillespie's another guy who got rotation minutes for the Toronto Raptors last year, and I think was one of like the 25 guys that the Orlando Magic called up this year when everyone was getting COVID. He's played NBA rotation minutes. He's bigger and stronger than Emmanuel Terry. He might be 6'10". I don't quite know his height, but like he's a rebounding machine. A nice rim protector. Both he and Emmanuel a little limited offensively, but bring a nice interior presence. Freddie Gillespie was a guy who started playing Division III college basketball and like averaged 4 minutes a game his freshman year in D3, and then eventually transferred to Baylor and then got an NBA contract his rookie year. Like he has a crazy story. Those are 2 guys that I really like. Another guy that potentially, if you want someone who's taller, Jay Huff, he was on a 2-way with the LA Lakers to begin the year. He is now an NBA free agent. We just saw him. He plays for South Bay. He, in the regular season, is averaging 3.8 blocks per game. He is 7'1". He has more offensive skill than the other 2 guys, but the other 2 are a little like have more lateral quickness and mobility and maybe a little springier, but Jay Huff is pretty athletic as well and pretty skilled. Those are 3 guys that come to my mind just like off the top of my head.
No, that is expert insight right there. I mean, I don't know who else could come up with a list like that. What about Jordan Bell? Is he no longer on the team?
Yeah. So that's a good. There you go. So actually, he just got traded to Fort Wayne.
No way.
So yeah,
did not know that.
Unfortunately for Jordan Bell, if you search Jalen LeCue's name, he's a former Phoenix Sun, you will see Jalen LeCue dunk over Jordan Bell. It was like a ridiculous dunk. And like that's not a slide on Jordan Bell because Jalen LeCue has some of the craziest dunks I've ever seen. He took off like from like 12 feet from the hoop, like in a game once and jammed over somebody.
Oh.
It was pretty incredible. But so Jordan Bell is another definite possibility. They didn't trade him because they're like, like he was great in the locker room. Our guys loved him. They just like Fort Wayne did not have a big man. And so like he was going to be a chance for him to play a lot of minutes. That's what Seth Cooper told us. That's the Santa Cruz head coach in a post-game media availability after a recent game. So Jordan Bell, I mean, there's a guy who knows the system. Completely knows the system. He would be a very viable option. He's also 6'8" maybe.
Sounds right.
So he'd be one of like on the smaller end of like a potential big. You know, they brought him back last year. He only played 1 game, and like in that game where they sat everyone, I think he was against New Orleans, maybe. The second to last game of the regular season. But yeah, no, I would throw him definitely in that company as well.
Yeah, I
for
always
sure.
figured Jordan Bell was like the insurance policy in case someone actually went down and they absolutely needed someone. But when we come back, I want to ask you because to me, the decisions made in the G League sometimes could foreshadow the trends that are appearing in the NBA, and the fact that teams are just not signing bigs is interesting. I mean, we've been seeing for a while now that the league is skewing smaller, more toward athleticism. But if the G League's just eliminating centers altogether, or at least just having just one per roster, that is fascinating. I want to talk about that. And obviously, the All-Star breaks around the corner. I'd love to pick your brain about MVP, All-Star picks, and the Warriors in general. Kevin Danna is going to stick around. First, I got to talk about Built Bars, though. Have you had one of those yet, Kevin? I don't know if we talked about that. A Built Bar?
I have not had a Built Bar. No.
Dude, I swear to God, man, Dieter swears by these things. My predecessor, Wes Goldberg, swears by these things. Wes Goldberg, who broke the Tom Brady story, I can't stop talking about that. But they love Built Bar. And look, this is the time of year that at least myself, maybe a lot of other people, just give up on your New Year's resolutions, right? But if you could stick to it, or even if you don't stick to it, all you got to do is go to Built Bar and gobble those things down. It almost feels like a resolution regardless because you enjoy eating them, but they're relatively healthy for you. They're the first ever protein. They actually just released a new flavor, by the way, called Puffs. It's the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including Puffs. And the Puffs are a fan favorite, by the way. They have flavors like yummy, cinnamony, churro. Oh, I love churros. Coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good. These are all going to be your new favorite. These are low calorie, high protein snacks. Replace your candy bars with these protein bars. They're just better. It's a fraction of the calories, an eighth on average of the sugar and carbs. Yet you get 17 grams of protein. Just go to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, the promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. The NBA trade deadline is this Thursday, February 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 Pacific, and the Locked On NBA podcast crew will be covering it live from 2 to 4 p.m. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On Fantasy basketball host Josh Lloyd to get analysis of every blockbuster move. Subscribe to Locked On NBA YouTube and turn your notifications on so you know when they go live. I'm joined by Kevin Danna, the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors. Speaking of the trade deadline, man, let's just talk NBA. The Warriors had this well-needed, well-deserved 3-day break, a really unusual part of the schedule, but then they're going right back at it. I think they got 3 games in 4 nights coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Look, I think you and I are on the same page, right? And correct me if I'm wrong at any point for any of this, that the Warriors are not going to be making any moves at the trade deadline. They have a team that I think they're happy with. But you got your pulse on the NBA dial. Or your finger on the NBA dial, I'm sorry. Have you heard anything? And what are your thoughts on the rumors about Ben Simmons and so much more?
Well, correction on the Warriors. I think Klay Thompson said he wanted a new washing machine at the trade.
I stand corrected, Jackie Moon.
Yeah.
Yes.
but yeah, no, I'm sorry. What was the back end of that question?
Oh, I was just curious. Like, are you hearing anything? Do you like some of the rumors out there? I mean, one of the big rumors is Ben Simmons for Harden, which shockingly makes sense, which you rarely ever see in the NBA.
I mean, I like that move for both teams for sure because you're getting something, and you're getting something of serious value for Ben Simmons, who has given you nothing this year because he doesn't want to play for you,
right?
And I mean, that team's got a chance. The Sixers have a chance to come out of the East this year. Like, it is like teams 1 through 5 are separated by 2 games in the East, 1.5 games. Teams 1 through 8 are separated by 4.5 games.
It's crazy.
The Boston Celtics have had a really subpar season, and they've gone on 1 winning streak, and now they're 4.5 games out of the number 1 seed.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
It's wild. So I think you kind of got to strike while the iron's hot. What better deal than James Harden is going to come around for Daryl Morey, right? If this is seriously being considered, I think they have to go for it. And I love it for the Brooklyn Nets because they kind of got too many guys that need the basketball in their hands. Like, I mean, when they're all healthy, that's a fantastic team. But what's been the problem? I think they played like 16 games together over 2 years where James Harden, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant. That might not be the exact number, but it was like the number earlier this year. And Kevin Durant's been out with a sprained MCL. Kyrie's only able to play half the games, and James Harden has been out of the lineup recently. I think both teams. It works for both teams.
Let me throw this hypothetical out there. It absolutely does. I agree with you. And the other name being thrown out there for Harden is Bradley Beal. Steve Nash came out yesterday and said that Harden's not on the market. I don't know if he's just blowing smoke. If that's true, that's I don't think that's smart. I mean, Harden clearly doesn't want to be there anymore. That whole team is a mess, in my opinion. The Nets, and which leads me to this question, and there's a connection to the Warriors. What if the Nets called up Bob Myers and said, "We'll give you Kevin Durant for Wiggins, Kuminga, and who's the third player that would have ended up in that? I guess just a first round pick. Would you do it?"
I mean, at this point in the season, like Kevin Durant's on an injury right now. It'd be tough to say yes, just because, I mean, it's Kevin Durant. You never say no to Kevin Durant. If Kevin Durant was fully healthy, you'd have to seriously consider that.
Yeah, you would. And the reason why I throw those names out there is because that's really what the trade was. Now that we have all the pieces together in that sign and trade that it was originally for D'Angelo Russell, and that ended up being for Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. And so that would be basically just giving back to the Nets what we got for Kevin Durant in the first place. But the Warriors are in such a good place right now. I don't know if you do it. That's what's really wild.
Jonathan Kuminga, the last couple of games, has been unreal good.
Totally.
I mean, the San Antonio fourth quarter, the reverse dunks and transition. I mean, obviously, there's more to his game than reverse dunk, but it'd be very, very tough to part with Jonathan Kuminga.
Yes, it would.
And hey, love or hate the fact that Andrew Wiggins is an all-star starter. He's an all-star starter this year. He's been damn good.
And he's a great fit. And he's a great
fantastic fit. So it'd be tough to break up the ecosystem. If you break up the ecosystem, though, for one player in the league, it probably would be for Kevin Durant.
Right. That's why I asked that question. I feel like anyone else, you say no. There's not even a consideration. But Durant, I mean, he knows the system. He's been here. Maybe what if he comes and goes mea culpa, I messed up. I'm sorry. I should not have come to this disastrous situation when I was in the perfect situation. I want to come back home. Will you bring me back? What does Bob Myers do? What do you sorry, buddy, you blew it. We have better pieces now. I saw that on Twitter, and I just literally, my brain started spinning, and it hasn't stopped since because I don't know what I would do. I really wouldn't know what I would do. I think I'd keep the guys I have now though, because Durant's 33. Kuminga's 19.
Yeah.
I mean, Kuminga could be the next Kawhi Leonard. Wiggins is only 26. So I think I'd pick youth, but at the same time, if Durant comes back, I think the World Championship's just a foregone conclusion. So
the one thing that worries me about Kevin Durant, all right, torn Achilles, sprained MCL. When he's out there, he's still the man. It's still probably, I mean, one of, if not the best player in the world. But he is 33, and now the injuries are piling up.
Yeah, they are, man. Where'd you get that shirt, by the way? That's a bitchin' shirt.
This is 2014-15 dry fit team. What's the distributed dry fit? This is an old school one right here.
I love it, dude. Yeah. I want that. That's a 7-year-old shirt that I want now. When we come back, the MVP discussion is starting to heat up a little bit. I've been starting to push the narrative because apparently that's what the MVP is based on, what people are talking about. So I'm pushing the narrative that Stephen Curry still deserves that MVP. I'd love to get Kevin Danna's insights on that and so much more. We're going to preview what's to come for the Warriors as well. But first, let's talk about a really long-time sponsor of this program, BetOnline.net. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Can you bet on G League games, by the way? I haven't actually looked that up, Kev.
No, I don't think those lines exist. But my retirement plan is to go sit at a sports book in Reno, and if I could bet on G League games when I am 80, trust me, I'll be doing it. I can't do it right. If there were G League lines, let me preface it by saying I would not be betting on games. I don't bet on sports right now, unfortunately, because I can't. But the moment I get fired or I'm ushered out of the business, I will be doing as much sports gambling as I possibly can. But right now, that is not an option for me.
Yeah, you're making up for lost time. And plus, I could totally picture an 80-year-old Kevin Danna just sitting in a Reno casino with lounge singer nearby. It's beautiful imagery.
I can't wait.
But you don't have to go to a casino. You can go to betonline.net. And it's not just football you can bet on. You could obviously bet on hoops. Sadly, not G League, at least not yet. But BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates on current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline.net, where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Kevin Danna joins me. You can follow him on Twitter at Kevo408. He's the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors and a legit voice of that. As I mentioned before to you, and I'll mention to the audience again, there was one day a couple years ago where you were filling in, I believe, for Tim Roy. I didn't know who you were. That was my first introduction to you. And my immediate thought, as someone who is very critical of media, as someone who is not easily impressed by media consumption and by broadcasting especially, my immediate thought was, that guy's good. I like what I'm hearing. And someday, if that opportunity ever comes to you, man, the Warriors are going to make a good decision. So keep up the great work, my man.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, dude. It's just being straight and honest, man. But I was on the flagship station of the Golden State Warriors yesterday over the weekend, 95.7 The Game, talking Warriors, and the conversation came up to Stephen Curry and the MVP award. And I'm going to sit here and argue till the end that I think he is being drastically undervalued. I think the national media is overlooking, in my opinion, the clear-cut MVP right now. And that is a man who is leading a team to the second best record in the NBA with nothing added except for 4 veteran minimum contracts and 2 rookies from a team that got bounced out of the play-in last year. The only difference from last year to this year is 4 veteran minimums, players past their prime. No disrespect to those 4 players. They're phenomenal this year. But if Stephen Curry isn't in the mix, this isn't even a playoff team, let alone the fact that they're a world championship contender. Do you agree with me on that, Kevin? Or do you think maybe I'm a little too much on the Steph Curry train?
Well, I will never disagree with anyone who's on the Steph Curry train. I'll put that out there right now. It's going to be tough for, I think, voters to overlook the month of January, even though his assist to turnover ratio was really good for some of the doldrums of his shooting slump. His plus minus is by far number 1 in the league.
Yeah.
So if you want to go by value, I think it doesn't say you don't really need to look at anything more than him being the plus minus leader by an order of magnitude.
Right.
So yeah, I mean I think voters though are going to say, well, look at his shooting percentages this year. And his shooting percentages aren't bad, but 38% from 3 on Steph Curry looks like 28% from 3 on
I know. He's almost like a victim of his own greatness, right? I think LeBron's kind of fallen victim to that in missing out on an MVP or 2. Michael Jordan fell victim to that. To me, too, the biggest robberies in MVP voting was, I believe, 1990 when Magic got it over MJ, and then 97, I believe, when Karl Malone got it over him. And you're right, And maybe that's what it is. It could be just he's a victim of his own success now, where the expectations are so ridiculously high. But I mean, again, to me, like the reason why I guess I'm very passionate about it this year is because last year Steph had such mind-blowing numbers. I mean, his numbers were
He
comparable. What you go ahead,
unreal.
sorry. Yeah, they were unreal. They were
Yeah.
comparable to like his 2016 season, and he did finish second in the MVP voting, but he didn't win it because his team wasn't that successful, right? They had the eighth best record. Jokic got it because, again, Murray went down, and despite that, they were still a relatively contending team. But you look at the team this year; the numbers aren't quite the same. But when you're 40-13 with this roster, which again, I take Steph out of the equation. This is not a playoff team that's biting for the lottery. I mean, that's what they are if Steph is not part of this. I mean, I no disrespect again to anyone else on this roster, but Draymond has been out for over a month now. Clay only came back pretty much right when Draymond went out. So Steph's never had his big three with him at all this entire season. And he's got two rookies who are developing alongside him. He's got Iguodala, who's now 38. Like Gary Payton II, Jordan Poole, yeah, they were on the roster last year too. But even though like we give them credit for the growth, again, last year they were the eighth best, and this year, you barely add some more players, and now they're the second best record in the whole NBA. I just want national media to at least show him a little more love. At least Stephen A. Smith, when you're doing your top five, at least put his name in there for F's sake, man. I see Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and it's like no disrespect to them, but Curry wasn't getting any mentions when Kevin Durant was here for the same reason. When you have two superstars, they kind of cancel each other out, and that's kind of how I see Phoenix. So who's left? It's Stephen Curry. It's Joel Embiid. Who is your MVP right now? Let's say, take away my homerism. Who is, in your opinion, if it's not Stephen Curry, who wins the MVP this award this year and why?
I think it's tough to go against Jokic right now. Like
Wow.
what he's doing. I mean, the Denver Nuggets, they haven't had Jamal Murray yet. They dealt with a ton of injury and COVID issues, which I guess every team has this year. But like, I mean, they're fighting potentially for home court in the first round. Like they're not that far out of fourth. They're not that far out of a play-in game either because Minnesota has a play-in tournament, I should say, because Minnesota's on a heater right now.
Yeah.
But Jokic's numbers this year are ridiculous. He'd be in there before Kevin Durant's MCL sprain. I'd say he was definitely in that conversation. I mean, Giannis is really coming on strong. Embiid, since he's gotten back from his injury, I mean, he had another 40-point game yesterday. I think like Embiid or Jokic probably, if we're not talking Steph. Durant, I think that the MCL is going to take him out of the conversation. It's just going to be too much missed time. If Embiid can stay healthy, I think he might be able to edge out Jokic there. But Jokic, I mean, he had that like 49-point triple-double over. Was that Phoenix? I just remember the pass into the corner to Aaron Gordon, like on point to like win a game in overtime. Couple of weeks, like just what he does is unreal out there. So
it is.
I think those are some of the guys that you're looking at.
Besides Steph.
Besides Steph, yes.
I'm totally putting words in your mouth. That's just me.
Yeah.
But no, that's my stance on it. I just think Steph's not getting enough love. We look ahead to the schedule before we wrap things up here. Again, the Warriors had this really random, unusual, yet vitally needed 3-game respite. Where they were off for 3 straight games. The entire weekend had no Warriors action. They pick it up again tonight against the mighty Oklahoma City Thunder. That game's at 5 p.m. And then they're off again tomorrow before they play a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday at the Jazz. And then they come right back home to play the Knicks. They basically have 6 games remaining before the All-Star break. They finish up the stretch at home against the Lakers. I can't wait for that. Then they travel to LA to play the Clippers, and then it's home against Nikola Jokic's Denver Nuggets, and then the All-Star break resumes, or begins. In these next 6 games, what's your prediction for the Warriors? What do you see as they enter the All-Star break?
It'd be nice if they went at the very least 4-2. I'm looking at my schedule right now. I have on my handy media guide now.
Nice.
I mean, Utah might be. It's always tough to win in Utah. Mitchell just came back. I think Gobert is not far behind. That'll be a tough one. That is luckily for Golden State on the front end of the back-to-back.
Yes.
I think like you look at this. you'd expect to win all of those games.
In
If
theory.
you go 5-1, you take it for sure. I think 5-1 is reasonable. 4-2, I think you'd be a little upset, but like that's still winning 67% of those games. You can't really hate too much.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're trying to, I mean, you're 2.5 back of Phoenix right now, like, and they don't give up too many games the way they've been playing. So like, if you want to keep pace, you're probably going to have to go 6-0. I will, this game against the Thunder, I will say they have some players out right now. Shai Gilgeous isn't going to play. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Mark Daigneault, how he's coached 17 wins out of that roster. Like, he's not going to get Coach of the Year votes, obviously, because they're going to finish probably like 27-55 or something like that. That's basically what they're on pace for. But they're like 3.5 games out of the play-in with like a roster full of 21-year-olds. Like, it's pretty incredible. Like, people were talking about the Thunder, like they were going to go 5-77 this season. And like they're competitive night in, night out. I mean, I've been a Mark Daigneault guy since he was a 5-year head coach in the G League, so I know him, and I've been able to see what he's done. I think like the Thunder being as competitive they are is a testament to the job they've done in Oklahoma City. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Daigneault for what he's been doing there.
Beautiful. There you go. And Kevin, give some love to the Santa Cruz Warriors. If people want to make the trip down to Surf City, USA, the real Surf City, USA, Santa Cruz, California,
100%.
how do they find tickets, and how can they follow the Santa Cruz Warriors on Twitter?
Yeah, SantaCruzBasketball.com. Get your tickets for all home games. The C-Dubs are going to be on the road for a little bit. They're at South Bay, which is not San Jose. Apparently, it's like they call, like, I think it's like the Manhattan Beach area, like the South Bay or something, kind of like near their practice facility, which I didn't know until they changed the name from the LA Defenders to the South Bay Lakers. So they play there for a couple of games, and on Valentine's Day they are in the romantic city that is Des Moines, Iowa. My grandma's from Des Moines, Iowa. So
there you go.
Shout out Des Moines. And that team plays in the building of the Iowa Barnstormers, where Kurt Warner played before he became the Super Bowl winning.
Correct. Good knowledge.
Yeah. And then they're finally back home February 17th to take on the Texas Legends, who are affiliated with the Dallas Mavericks. That'll be February 17th. Then they have the AllStar Break. And G League has its own AllStar Break as well, even though they don't have an All-Star game anymore.
But yeah,
that's what it's like coming up. And then at G League Warriors on Twitter.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kevin. It is always a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking time to come on with me, brother. And I hope we do it again soon.
Always great to chop it up with you, Cyrus.
Thanks, man. That's Kevin Danna. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevo408. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurf Roadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Dieter Kurtenbach is back with me tomorrow. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Later, folks. See you all tomorrow. Take care.